Welcome back to another episode of Sports Avenue. I'm Jimmy Simonis, and today is the 42nd episode of Sports Avenue. So I want to say thank you to everyone who's listened this far, and I hope you continue listening because it's only going to get better from here. But today, I have a special guest that I would like to welcome. He's played hockey for over 20 years. I would like to welcome Will Jurgensen. Will, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, not a problem. So let's just start off. You've been playing hockey for 20 years. Talk about all your experiences, or just talk about, your life growing up with hockey and playing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been fortunate to have hockey be a really, really big part of my life. It actually is still that way today, and it really all began in Omaha, Nebraska, where I'm from. I currently live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but most people don't think of Nebraska as a big hockey town. Surprisingly, though, there's actually a lot of really good hockey that's come out of Omaha, and we have the University of Nebraska Omaha Mavericks, a Division I hockey team, who were actually a real big part of kind of my upbringing. I was fortunate to be coached by a lot of former UNO hockey players and played for the Junior Mavericks growing up. Didn't necessarily come from a hockey family, but, I had a father who decided to kind of tip his hat into the hockey ring, and it really became a strong passion of mine and has kind of led me, through college. I went to Marquette University and played club hockey for Marquette, and am currently in my sixth season as the head coach of the Marquette University club hockey team, where we have a really great program. We actually have two teams now, a D2 ACHA and a D3 ACHA hockey team. And on top of that, I'm fortunate to be involved in a lot of youth hockey, locally in Wisconsin as well. So it's a passion of mine, and have been really fortunate to, make it a career as well.
So you said you didn't come from a hockey family. So how did you end up getting into the hockey rink?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. My dad, he grew up a baseball guy, grew up a football guy, and I was fortunate because one of his really good friends had a son a couple years older than I who decided to start playing hockey, and that's kind of when my dad took a little bit of interest in it. And whether it's a full factual story or not, I can't say, but the story goes that he asked me as a 4-year-old whether or not I wanted to play football or hockey, and luckily for me, I decided to pick hockey, and he decided to kind of give it a whirlwind.
So what would you say is your favorite part about playing hockey?
Oh man, it's a loaded question, Jimmy, right off the bat. There are a lot of different components to what I would say makes up my favorite part of it. But, the speed of the game is certainly a huge part of that. Just, unlike a lot of other sports, hockey, while there might be some structure, it's a very free-flowing game, and you can draw X's and O's on a board all you want, but at the end of the day, it's very reactionary, and you have to be able to read and react to the plays and the speed. And for me, that's always been something that I've really enjoyed about the game, just the ability to adapt to different situations. And at the same time, it's a team game, right? So, I mean, there are 6 guys on the ice, and you have to work together. It does not work as an individual sport. So the team capacity of it is something that I really enjoy as well.
So as a kid, and you're talking about reactions, how did you develop your reflexes or your instincts to become better at the game?
Yeah, it's a tough thing, and I know it's tough because it's hard to teach. And as a youth hockey coach now, you try to find ways to teach the hockey IQ or the ability to read and react, and ultimately it comes from experience. It comes from being put in different situations hundreds of times and seeing a lot of different outcomes, and then taking those experiences and sticking with the ones that work. So. It's a lot of reflexes. The game itself from a skill perspective, hand-eye coordination is something you can work on as an individual, right? I mean, you can stick handle in your garage, which I would do, and, with a golf ball and just do it for hours at a time. But at the same time, there's a lot of parts of the game that you just have to get involved. You have to be a part of it, and you really have to kind of live and learn through your experiences.
So are there any experiences that stood out to you growing up that kind of made you, I would say, improve into hockey?
For sure. Yeah. Kind of going back to being fortunate to have, Division I caliber guys be our coaches. We were able to learn from guys who were incredibly skilled hockey players, and they had little secrets that, good coaches along their path had taught them that I still go back to today, different situations, even from my squirt and peewee coach who just taught me how to shoot a puck. So there are a lot of moments that I go back to, from those guys in particular and what they were able to teach me, that, advanced my ability to be successful at the game. And ultimately, I do think that there's a correlation to being, finding success in a sport and then also your desire to continue to want to play that sport and ultimately your love and passion for that sport.
And what position did you play in hockey?
So I played center most of my hockey career. I was a centerman. I don't necessarily have the body type of a centerman. I'm a little bit of a bigger guy, and so I usually get pinpointed as a defenseman. But I was a forward. I'm a very offensive-minded guy, and I'm still today a very offensive-minded coach as well.
So playing the center, you're on both sides of the rink. So how did you use those skills that you had to develop on both sides of the rink to be a coach?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, there's no question that, as a centerman, you have a lot of responsibility in the defensive zone as well, right? What you'll see most of the time is your centers are playing down low. They're helping the defensemen and reading and reacting. We call it a lot of times it's a 3-on-3 battle down low. So, the three opposing forwards with your two defensemen and your centerman. And so as a centerman, you really have to see the whole ice. You have to be able to think a couple of plays ahead as the puck moves maybe from your defenseman to your winger to you at the center or potentially to the offside wing. And so you really kind of have to have a vision of the entire ice rink. And I think that has certainly helped me a lot as a coach because it's the same way as a coach. You have to be able to see the entire ice. You can't get caught. We call it puck watching, right? You can't just be focused on where the puck's at. You have to be focused on the other parts of the ice as well and understand kind of how things are developing and be able to read and react, quickly and accordingly.
So what were some of the skills you had to develop more than others growing up?
Ooh, what do you mean?
I guess some, like things that didn't come naturally for you, like like the flow of the game seems like it came pretty naturally. But like, were there any skills like, say, like skating or like accuracy with your shots that you had to develop over time?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, skating is by far one of the biggest skills, the most important skills that you need to be a hockey player. And I'm a slow-footed type of guy. Let's put it that way. I have Fred Flintstone feet, very flat feet. And so, just kind of natural skating ability was not something that came easy and certainly took me a lot longer to develop, whether it's edge work and the ability to generate speed off of crossovers. I mean, that was something that I had to work really, really hard at. I do think that, shooting and the hand side of it came much more natural. And so without question, I mean, just the ability to skate and the ability to transition quickly and, join a play, fast was certainly something that took me a lot of time to develop. And thankfully I had a lot of really good skating coaches as well as just regular coaches along the way that were able to pinpoint my weaknesses and give me things to work on.
So you said you had skating coaches. How did they teach you to skate compared to, like, say, like hockey coaches? Did hockey coaches help you with skating at all?
Yeah. It's interesting. What's funny is you'll find a lot of figure skaters turn into skating coaches or power skating coaches. And if you watch figure skaters, you watch their edge work and you watch their ability to do crossovers. I mean, they are incredible skaters. And so, what they do is they take the stick out of your hands. They get rid of the idea of the puck and trying to play the game itself, and they just focus on skating. And so a lot of it is edge work, and it's, your inside edges and your outside edges, and they see skating differently. And so I was fortunate to have a couple of skating coaches growing up who were former figure skaters, and as a kid, you don't appreciate it. Let's put it that way. I certainly wish that I would have spent more time listening to them. But as a young kid, you're naive. You're sitting out there in your hockey skates and you're like, oh, what is this? What does this coach know? They're a figure skater. And I think it's acceptable, I guess, for a young kid to think that. But looking back on it, I wish I would have taken their instruction a little bit more serious because there's no question that there are a lot of really, really talented skaters, former figure skaters, but also former hockey players at the same time who are very intelligent when it comes to skating and have a lot of really good things to offer. So there's no question I learned a lot from them. And still today try to take some of the things that they taught me and to teach the next generation.
So yeah, you say you coach a youth team. What have you noticed? But the youth of the hockey compared to when you started playing.
You know what I love about hockey is that the game doesn't change, or it hasn't changed. And there are certainly technological advances in the game, which is the same with any sport, but in a lot of ways the game is the same. Most of the time the rink sizes are the same. It's still a little black puck that you have to put in a net to score goals, and so there are a lot of similarities between my youth hockey and what I see in youth hockey today. I don't have children of my own, so I can't look at it from a parent perspective per se, but just from watching the hockey progress and trying to put myself in these kids' shoes because I've been there before, I definitely see a lot of similarities. But at the same time, I mean, I think just as generations pass, you certainly find differences as well, but there isn't really anything blaring that stands out to me to say, oh, this youth hockey today is this much different. To be honest, the biggest differences are what's available to kids, and you can relate this back to pretty much any sport. What type of videos they can watch online, the amount of skills coaches or skating coaches that are available today. There's a lot, right? There's just so much stuff out there that I would say that's the biggest difference. But at the same time, youth hockey is youth hockey, and ultimately it's about continuing to understand what types of skills are important for kids to learn and making sure that you're prioritizing those. USA Hockey has made a lot of changes, though. If anything, that's where the biggest changes have come. So, and when I was growing up, we could check as peewees. So as peewees, you're typically fifth and sixth graders, and physical. That's when checking began. Whereas now, checking doesn't begin until you're a Bantam. So typically seventh, eighth grade, freshman and high school years. So that was a big difference. And then also, from even younger than that, when I was a squirt and a mite, we were playing full ice. Whereas today they actually have a lot of these younger kids playing, half ice games, which I think is the right move, because at the end of the day, you learn skill development so much quicker in kind of small areas than you do in a big ice. That I think USA Hockey has made a lot of changes to make the sport better and to allow kids to develop, the important skills, while not necessarily quicker, to be able to understand those skills and be able to implement them at an earlier age.
And you said as well you coached for the Marquette club team. What's that like, coaching a college team?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is something that I take a lot of pride in, especially, being a Marquette alumni and, having played at Marquette, coming into a program that, it wasn't necessarily about trying to win hockey games, which club hockey in itself, the ACHA and as a whole, has really, taken on many different agendas, if you will, over the years. And I definitely think that the league as a whole has become much more competitive. You see a lot of kids who might have gone to juniors a few years ago now deciding to go play top level club hockey instead of going to juniors. And that in turn has made the league much more competitive. And so for me, it's to watch kind of the transition of the league has been amazing. And then also to be able to, transform our program at Marquette as well. From a team when I came in as a freshman, we didn't cut a single kid, and we were a below average hockey team to where we are today with two programs and over 40 kids in our program. Watching that development has been amazing. And, at the end of the day, there's no hockey for these guys after they leave club hockey, right? I mean, their hockey careers are done, right? And so ultimately for me, it's about making those last 4 years of their competitive hockey careers, an enjoyable one and one where they, set out to hopefully accomplish something.
I was just gonna say, how do you, I guess, how do you like change your mindsets from coaching going into a college environment, then going into the youth environment where it's two totally different people at two totally different times in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. What I think is the best part about it is the similarities, though. The amount of struggles that the college boys have in being able to complete passes is the same thing you see at the youth thing a lot of times. But also, a lot of the frustrations that you see at the college level with bad habits. I mean, when you see those at the youth level, what's awesome is you're able to pinpoint them quickly and then, make it a conscious effort to say, hey, look, these are the type of habits that these kids need to change now, right? You have such a better ability to change those habits when people are young and prioritizing it. So, I would say that's a huge component there. Certainly the language that you use is different. The college boys have come from really, top level AAA and varsity programs. And so they've been very well coached for a number of years. And for us, it's a matter of not necessarily teaching the systems as much as it's about trying to get, a team of 20 guys all on the same page. Whereas at the the youth level, it really is about trying to teach them the structure of what, systems are, right? And without overcomplicating it. So it's nice to kind of go to square one. And I think as a coach, when you can start from point A and teach it for the youth kids, I think that it ultimately helps me as a college coach as well, because I look at the little things and I get to see, whether it's a breakout or a regroup or a forecheck in the offensive zone, you get to kind of see it from, point A to point Z, as opposed to just kind of an overarching, this is how something is supposed to be done. And then it also reminds me that, sometimes it is important, even though these are college kids and they're 18 to 22 years old, you have to slow it down and you have to kind of go back to the basics at times. And so the youth kids are a good refresher of kind of how to teach those basics.
And what would you say is the biggest thing you emphasize both at the college and youth level?
Oof. Oh boy. I mean, it's not, I'm trying to think of the right word to say here, right? But at the end of the day, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right? I think that's something that is true in every sport at every level. And so trying to develop in these kids, whether they're 10 years old or whether they're 20 years old, that as long as you've done, what you can to provide them with the essentials that they need to be successful, that it's on them. And hard work is something that a lot of times can't be taught, but it can be measured. And that, whether it's a practice or whether it's a game or whether it's off ice training, whatever it might be, you really are going to get out of it what you put into it. And so for me, at both levels, it's just about kind of creating expectations. And, as a coach, you're held responsible for making sure that you give them the opportunities to be successful, but then holding, kids or college guys accountable to living up to those expectations. So while the skill sets might be very different, there are a lot of underlying, points, I guess, that, go between both levels, all levels of hockey, for sure.
So after playing at Marquette for college, did you go any further with hockey?
I did not. Nope, I did not. I mean, club hockey is, while it has certainly gotten, and the talent level has increased drastically, it still is club, right? It's still a club sport. And a lot of guys that are playing club, most of the time weren't able to make it elsewhere. I mean, I certainly fall into that category as well. Division I NCAA hockey has, drastically improved. Well, let's put it this way. Club hockey has improved, and that's a tribute to every other level of hockey improving. And so I personally didn't play. I was straight to the men's leagues, once my college career was over. And I'd say that's probably true for 99% of guys that play club hockey, for sure.
So when you play in these men's leagues, how are they like set up? Do you still currently play in them?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what is your favorite thing about playing in the men's hockey?
Oh boy, probably the beers after the game with the guys in the locker room, to be honest. I tell you what, the hockey community is a special community, and it is. There are so many different people that are a part of it, and everyone comes from different backgrounds, and they are a part of different businesses and organizations that they work at or they do on a daily basis, and so you have a very diverse group. And what I love the most about, the men's league here in Wisconsin in particular, in southeastern Wisconsin and Milwaukee, is just the camaraderie. I mean, you go up against guys, it gets heated. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of things that are probably wrong with adult hockey. and you see it on a nightly basis. I mean, the treatment of refs most of the time is just ridiculous. Because these are guys out there. Sure, they're getting paid to be out there, but at the same time, you're winning what, right? You're winning a trophy at the end of the year, and you're 40 or 30 or 20 years old. So, I think there's certainly some issues, but at the end of the day, people are there for the right reasons. They're there for the camaraderie. They're there for the relationships that they build within the team that they have and the league that they have. And then, at the end of a game, you have some beers, and a lot of leagues that I play in, we actually, both teams will get together afterwards and go to a local bar. A lot of local bars sponsor a lot of these teams. So you go and you hang out and you just kind of get to forget about everything else for a while. And ultimately what brings everyone together is hockey. I've been fortunate very recently to actually start there's a national organization called Hockey Players in Business, and they have local chapters all across the United States. They actually have a couple in Canada as well, and I actually just became the president of the Milwaukee chapter. And the whole idea behind why I would even want to be a part of something like that is because I know that the community is so special, and I know that there are opportunities for people to get together that have that common goal or common, factor of hockey, being a hockey player or enjoying the sport of hockey. But then there are also ways that we can help each other from a business perspective as well. And we just had our first event on Tuesday, actually, and it was a really great success.
So how do you help these players that have their own businesses or the businesses they work for?
Yeah, so the best way it's a networking group ultimately, right? So it's about, you walk into different networking groups, from whether it's a local chamber, or whether it's a local, business or local group that puts on these networking groups. And ultimately, when you start a conversation with someone, you're trying to find a similarity, right? And so what I think this group does is it already connects that similarity, right? You and the other person there, that you already have hockey. So it's a great way to just start the conversation. And ultimately what we saw is, people are looking for referrals, people are looking for employees, people are looking for, different connections. And so what we want to do is give people an opportunity to find, other local people in the hockey community that can help them with that. And we saw it already at our first event. We saw a couple of referrals take place, and there was another guy there who was looking for a new job, and he's already got an interview lined up. So when you see something like that happen in after your first event, I think that there's a lot of good that can come of it.
Oh, most definitely. So, being a president of this Milwaukee chapter, coaching youth and the club team at Marquette, and playing in the men's league, how do you keep mentally and physically fit and fresh so you don't kill your body and your mind?
Right. No, it's a good question. Let's put it this way. There's a lot of improvement that I can make on that front. I think the mental side is certainly important. I think I'm fortunate in being a part of all that stuff, that from the physical side, I certainly stay very active. But, on top of that, I have a day job too. I work at a web development digital marketing agency here in Milwaukee, and, in business development. And so, there's a lot going on, right? And you have to prioritize first and foremost. I'm getting married here in a month and a half as well, but I surround myself with a lot of good people. Let's put it that way. Again, it comes back to, I think, just the power of the hockey community and the amount of people that are willing to go out of their way to help you and assist you. And so I think surrounding myself with a lot of really, really good people, it helps keep me sane. It helps keep me focused, and it helps kind of keep my priorities in line. And so, but there's no question that is something that I struggle with, the mental side, right? And just making sure that I can be at my best at whatever I'm doing, but sometimes you have long days, and you just don't want that to carry over into a youth hockey practice, right? It's going to happen. And so you have to try and put, strong pillars in place in your life. And it's not something that I have any true good experience on, but I definitely think it's something that is a continued work in progress, and and trying to evaluate. But I do think surrounding yourself with people that believe in what it is you want to accomplish and want to be a part of the things that you do is a super, super big help.
And with growing up, who were some of those people that did want to help you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish as a hockey player?
Oh, first one that comes to mind is certainly my parents. I'm very fortunate to have parents that as long as you show passion and you show that it's something you care about, they're going to support you 100%. I mean, I remember even after, I graduating from Marquette, I went back to Omaha. I got a full-time job. I was, in the business world. I was ready to start that career. And all of a sudden our head coach stepped down and I decided to put my hat in the ring. And, for me, the biggest thing that made the difference was when my dad said to me, he goes, I think you were born to be a hockey coach, and it was one sentence, but the power that came behind that sentence for me, just knowing that, he not only approved of my decision to move back to Milwaukee and to kind of have to try to find a new job and do all that stuff. And I was doing it to be a club hockey coach. I mean, it was incredibly powerful. And so my parents stand out, first and foremost, but I have been very, very fortunate that, especially in Omaha, growing up, having, really great coaches. I've got, one of my coaches who coached me for 3 or 4 years coming to my wedding. I mean, those are powerful relationships. And it's not just the on ice stuff, it's the off ice stuff as well. I mean, spending the time actually, teaching you how to become a man, really, really stuck with me. And then, in Milwaukee as well, it's been very similar. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of really good parents, at the youth level who have supported me. And, my assistant, I've had the same assistant coach at Marquette for 6 years. And he's another guy who's stood behind me through thick and thin, through ups and downs. And, so the list is long. Let's put it that way.
Oh, that's good, especially when you're growing up, because there are going to be people that are going to try and steer you from the other direction because they think they don't know what's best for you. Only you know what's best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I went through a very interesting moment after, coming out of my Bantam year where Omaha hockey at that point in time, the AAA level it wasn't at the level that it is today. Let's put it that way. Omaha AAA today is a very, very good program. So when I was growing up, if you were a talented hockey player and you wanted to try to go to the next level, you had to leave Omaha and play AAA hockey somewhere else. And, that was not an option for me. My dad was very adamant that I was going to go to the high school that I ended up going to, which was a Jesuit high school, something that made a huge impact on his life. And so, leaving Omaha to try and continue my hockey career was not an option. And so I was put in a situation where I had to decide whether to play for the AAA team that was in Omaha or just go and play for my high school. And you have a lot of people with their own perspectives and some of them selfishly because they want you to do a certain thing. But again, I think it comes back to my dad saying, look, you're old enough to put a pros and cons list together and weigh your options and make a decision that you want to make. And so there's no question there are going to be people pulling you in a lot of different directions, most of the time for their own personal benefit. But there are certainly, a select few people in your life who ultimately want what's best for you. And I think it's important to recognize who those people are in your life. And make sure that you really listen to what their perspectives are when you're faced with those tough challenges.
And you said your dad says you were meant to be a hockey coach. What are some of your goals going forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, to be honest, and I wish I did because I think having goals is incredibly important and trying to reach those. For me, it's I want to be a better coach every year. And I know that's very, there's not a whole lot into that statement, but at the same time, I think that in 6 years as a Marquette coach, I have been able to become a better coach, and my team, you measure that in wins and losses ultimately, right? And I think that speaks for itself. What the future holds, I do think is there's a lot of question marks behind that. Trying to, as a club player, I don't have the experience that juniors players or NCAA college players or semi-professional hockey players had. And so there are a lot of doors that aren't going to necessarily be open just kind of based off of what my resume looks like. But, at the same time, that's never stopped me from trying to pursue, different connections with high level hockey coaches or at least continuing to explore that option. Right. So, I by no means have I ever said, hey, look, there's a chance I might be a hockey coach full time someday. I still believe that strongly, but at the same time, I'm also very content, with where I'm at Marquette and what I'm doing with youth hockey across, southeastern Wisconsin and what I'm able to do kind of in the business world as well with the Milwaukee hockey community. So, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what the future holds, but I definitely am passionate about what I'm doing. And I think as long as I continue to to work hard and put all I have into it, that, good things are going to come from it.
And I was going to ask you this earlier, but you said that like the talent across the board has greatly improved, especially in the youth leagues. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so what's interesting is I heard, and I had never thought of it before, but it's an interesting kind of thing to think about when you think about the recession in 2008. I mean, first and foremost, hockey is an expensive sport, and it's unfortunate that it is, but at the same time, between ice time and just equipment costs and things like that, unfortunately it doesn't even seem like it's getting lowered. It only seems like it's getting higher. So you naturally take out a huge population of potential hockey players, which I think is wrong. And if nothing else, hope to maybe try to make a dent in something like that here in Wisconsin. But you go back to the recession and what a lot of people weren't putting their kids in hockey. And so you have this whole, 4 to 5 years of kids who just weren't growing up playing hockey. And since, things have gotten back on track, the number of kids that are entering hockey is drastically increased. And as a part of that, your talent level is getting higher. You're getting more teams, more kids are getting more ice time. I do think that USA Hockey has put a huge emphasis on how they train their coaches. And so, coaches today are much better trained. They have a much better understanding of not only the concepts of hockey. And when you think of youth coaches, a lot of times you're thinking of dads, right? And yeah, some of them might have played hockey, but a lot of them are probably getting into the sport with their children. And I think USA Hockey has done a really, really good job of making sure that these coaches are properly trained, and that's leading to kids developing better, and developing quicker, and ultimately leading to more competitive leagues, and ultimately leading to the talent level certainly rising.
So for hockey to not get hit with that bug like that in the Great Recession, how can hockey or USA Hockey avoid going through those phases if there is another recession to not lose or have a drastic decline?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I'm not an economist by any means, and it's hard for me to speak on that per se. But I don't think there's much they can do, right? I mean, I hope someday that we can get to a world of hockey where it's accessible for everyone, regardless of your income level. It's just not there. It's not even close to being there, and it's unfortunate. They do USA Hockey again. They have try hockey for free days, constantly throughout the year, and I do think the sport. I think the NHL has done an amazing job. I think the amount of people that watch NHL hockey today has drastically increased, and so I do think just natural interest in the sport of hockey has gone up significantly. But at the end of the day, if you can't afford to go and buy equipment, and you can't afford to buy skates, then there's just nothing you can do, right? I mean, that's just kind of a natural part of it. But I don't think people are going to stop watching. I don't think people are going to stop trying. And so I think that the sport of hockey is very healthy right now, and I hope that continues, and I hope we can continue to get more and more people involved in the sport, as we continue to progress.
So I do want to talk to you about the NHL. What are your thoughts on this season so far?
Yeah, I love the NHL. I'm a diehard Colorado Avalanche fan. So I watch NHL hockey quite a bit. I watch the Avs as much as I can. I was fortunate to go to a Tampa Bay Colorado Avalanche game earlier this year. I love the NHL. I think that it's in a really good spot. I mean, you see, the money has gotten into it a little bit. They've gone through, you look at 2004, they went through a lockout. They've had a mini lockout, half season lockout since then. So, there are a lot of things on the back end I know they've been working through, but at the same time, I feel like the NHL is super strong. And I think attendance is up. I think that viewership is up. And I think the quality of hockey overall is up. There's no question. I mean, again, it goes back to, if you watch a game from the 90s, when I was born, or the 80s, even before that, and you watch a game today, a lot of it is the same. What's the differences are the size of the goalies' pads and the technology in the sticks, which I thought is interesting. Someone was saying that that's leading to more injuries because guys are blocking shots, which I think is true. So in my head, I'm like, well, let's stop making sticks that nice then. I saw a guy with a a wood stick just the other day go top shelf, right? I mean, it's possible. And so, I think that they could hold off on some of those things, but I think the game itself is very much the same. And I like where it's at right now, and I love watching hockey. I think it's the best sport. Of course, I'm incredibly biased, but you see some young kids, 18-year-old kids who are coming into the league today who are talented hockey players, and it's fun to watch. It is. It's entertaining, and that's ultimately what it's about.
What makes you? How did you end up becoming a Colorado Avalanche fan?
So I don't know how long we have on your podcast, Jimmy, but no, being from Nebraska, Colorado's the state just to the west of us, and so we were able to get Avalanche broadcasts in Omaha growing up. So I was actually fortunate to be able to watch a lot of Avalanche hockey growing up, and that's how I learned the game, to be honest, more than anything. I'd come home from my own practice, as a young kid, and I would sit there and I'd watch the Avs play. I mean, it's one of those things that you can't teach, right? And looking back on it, I'm thankful because I think it's allowed me to understand the game that I do today, and the Avalanche were incredible in the late 90s, early 2000s when I was growing up watching them. So, I mean, not only was I watching hockey, but I was watching, Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg and Patrick Waugh. I mean, some of the best guys to ever play the game. And it taught me a lot about the game. And so it's above any other sport, above any other team, the Avalanche, because they've been such a huge part of my life. That's my go-to squad for sure.
So what were your thoughts on last year's postseason run that they had?
I loved it. It was unexpected, put it that way. I've, recently, especially the last few years, ever since I got out of school and started making some money, I kind of made it a goal of mine to try and, see the Avs play in different away buildings at least once a year. And my goal is by the time I'm 40 to have made it to every NHL rink. It's a lofty goal, but I think I've got 13 or 14 knocked off so far. So there were some years, I remember watching them in San Jose. We had our fourth or fifth string goalie in. They lost 6-2. I watched at Joe Louis. The big rivalry in the 90s and early 2000s was with the Red Wings. And so I was fortunate to go to the very last Avs Red Wings game at Joe Louis Arena before they built the new arena. And the Avs were the worst placed team in the West, and the Red Wings were the worst placed team in the East. And so you're watching a lot of guys who play in the AHL and whatnot. So I've seen a lot of bad Avs hockey recently. So to have a run like they did last year, it was incredible to watch. I mean, just the storylines that were a part of it as well. I mean, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but you have a kid like Cale Makar who on, I think it was Friday night he wins the Hobey Baker, which is essentially like the Heisman Trophy of NCAA hockey. On Saturday, he ends up losing in the national championship game, and then on Sunday, he flies to Calgary or maybe he flew to Colorado. Flies to Colorado, plays in Game 3 in his first ever NHL game, and scores a goal. Right? I mean, just to be able to be a part of something like that as a team who's coming in as a wild card is putting a stomping on the number one team in the West. It was pretty incredible. It was a fun time to be an Avalanche fan. Let's put it that way.
So what do you think they have to do this season to build on what they had last season?
Well, they're going through some injury trouble right now, but I think that, I really do enjoy watching, their head coach is Bednar, and I really, really enjoy kind of watching, his interviews and the way he talks about the game. I think that he has, he's had such a calm demeanor about himself, and as a coach myself, I try to kind of pick up on the way he talks about his players and the way, he talks about what their expectations are. And, you can tell after a bad loss, it's kind of gotten to the point he's been there 3 years now, where you kind of have a feeling what his post game, speech is gonna be about. And so for him, it's a lot about just, coming ready to play and being consistent, and battling, right? It comes back to the hard work that, what's the message that relates to college kids and youth kids. At the end of the day, it's the same at the NHL level as well. It comes back to, showing up ready to go, being prepared and taking the ice, with a purpose. And I think that, if the Avs are able to do that relatively consistently, that they have the talent to be successful. So for me, that's all you ever ask for as a fan, I think, as a fan, as a coach, as a parent, as anything, you just want to watch people compete And you can tell pretty quickly when people aren't competing. So, as a fan, when you tune in, you just want to watch your team compete. You want to watch them work hard, and you want to watch them give themselves a chance to be successful.
So growing up and right now, who is your favorite hockey player of all time?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a buddy who lives in Arizona, diehard Avs fan, and him and I just had this conversation the other day, actually. And it is a tough one to answer. Man,
how about top three players then?
top three players of all time. I wasn't fortunate enough to watch Gretzky, and so I don't, obviously he's probably the best hockey player to ever play, but I wasn't really able to watch him. So, I mean, of course, watching the Avs, you have a guy like Peter Forsberg, kind of came over to the Quebec Nordiques before they were the Avs in kind of a blockbuster trade. And so he wasn't, promoted as this top guy, but he ended up being just an incredible hockey player. And what I love about Peter Forsberg was not only was he a finesse guy with skill, but he was also a hard hitter. I mean, that guy would go out there and drop some bombs on people, and then he would turn around, he would turn a hit into a pass in the slot, or another guy would score. He'd score himself. So Peter Forsberg, by all means, from a leadership perspective, you got to go to a guy like Joe Sakic. I mean, just listening to the way people talk about him as a leader, I think that, he was a quiet leader, but at the same time, he's one of those guys who went out and just busted his butt every night. And I know that everyone in that organization respected him, and so you look for qualities like that. And so I loved watching Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg. I kind of want to pick a non-Avalanche guy just to show that I'm not as biased as I am. But I don't know, man. There's a lot. There really is a lot. I was able to go to Adam Foote's retirement ceremony in Colorado, so he's another longtime Avs defenseman or Ray Bourque. I mean, that year you get me caught in this Avalanche trap, Jimmy. This conversation is gonna go on a long time.
No worries. But I do want to ask you one more question. So for hockey, what do you think they need to do, or what does the sport need to do to keep growing over time?
Oh boy, I think one of my things it's kind of new for me for some reason. I don't know why I go to it, but the game of hockey, and I tell it to my kids all the time. You can't cheat the game. The game is its own, and so one thing that would worry me is if you start seeing rules that change kind of the framework of what hockey has always been. So I think that's really, and what's interesting is, you talk about sports betting today, right? I mean, there's an opportunity in the next few years where people are going to be able to gamble on games that they're at with things provided by the arena itself. And so I think that there's a huge concern with how that might affect, actual hockey itself, or any sport for that matter. I just hope that it's very regulated. I hope that, there are a lot of rules put in place so that it doesn't take away from the integrity of the game. And I think it's something that's inevitable. It's coming. It's already here. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see what kind of effect, sports gambling has on the sport, to be honest with you.
Actually, I take that back. I do have one more question I want to ask.
Hey, keep them coming. No problem.
What makes hockey the best sport in the world to you?
Oh, I love that, and it's kind of the opposite of the fact that I want more people to play it, and it needs to be more inclusive. But I love the fact that it's something that a lot of people don't know how to do. They don't know how to play it, and I think that it's very unique. There are so many different skills being put in place. There's a level of athleticism, but also a level of just intelligence that you have to have, the speed of the game, the fast pace of the game. I mean, it's one of those sports where you have to be communicating with each other constantly. And when you're not communicating with each other constantly, then things can go wrong very quickly. And so I think that it just creates this bond, and it creates kind of just a natural chemistry that you start to develop with your team that you just don't find in other aspects of life. For me, it's been a part of, so much of what I've done in my life, but I do think that there are a lot of traits that kids can learn from the game. And, people can see in watching the game that they are hard to find other places. And so I love what it does from a development perspective, and then ultimately there's just something about being a part of a team that works hard and puts goals in place, and when you're able to achieve those goals, there's just nothing quite like it.
Well, I do want to say thank you for joining the show. I just want to say it's been a blast because I don't watch much hockey, but like I said, it's cool to get insight from like a player and coach like you who have played it their entire lives and through different phases, like from playing club to growing up playing in those youth leagues, and now you're playing men's while coaching entirely two different teams from club to youth. It's awesome. So I just want to say thank you, and I greatly appreciate you joining.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for asking some really good questions and talking about the game of hockey. I really appreciate it as well.
Yeah, so that's not a problem, and you'll definitely be back here at some point.
Cool. I look forward to it.
Yeah, so guys, that has been the 42nd episode of Sports Avenue with Will Jurgensen. Will, do you want to tell people where they can find you or can contact you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually about to launch my own podcast called The Sport of Business. So don't go looking for it quite yet, but hopefully early 2020 it'll be officially launched, and it's very similar to Jimmy's. It's about finding people who have played high-level athletics or been a part of high-level athletics in some capacity, and now are part of the the business world in some way, shape, or form, and trying to understand kind of those characteristics and how they correlate between the two. So the Sport of Business will be out in 2020. Will Z. Jurgensen on Facebook. Keystone Click is where I work, so you can find my email address at Keystone Click. LinkedIn, Will Jurgensen on LinkedIn as well. So hopefully that anyone has any questions, we'll be happy to feel free to reach out.
Yeah, well, again, thank you for joining. Everyone, I want to say thank you for listening. Have a great day, have a great week, and don't forget, the road for sports starts here at Sports Avenue. Everyone, take care.